The Nice House in the Lake, issue 12. James Tynion IV writing with Alvaro Martinez Bueno on the art. So yeah, let's just start off with the lead here, which is I got to the last page and it said the words "End of Cycle 1," and I thought, Tynion, you beautiful bastard.
Yep.
You beautiful.
So I'm ready. I'm ready for this to be like, okay, knowing Tynion's style, we're not going to get all the answers, but I feel he'll leave us in a spot where it's like, oh, that was a nice story. You know, I wonder what's next for him. I wasn't expecting this to go to a second part.
Honestly, I feel like there's going to be at least two more. Like, if this is the end of cycle 1, I'm expecting at least two other like series to come out of this. Like, and this issue is very good, and this issue is doing a lot of great stuff with revealing stuff about Walter and Nora, specifically revealing that she kind of knows some stuff and did know some stuff from before about this place and how it works and all the rest of it, and we'll get into that. But as it was getting towards those last couple of pages, I was kind of feeling like, yeah, but we set all that stuff up at the start about them in the future, and it looked like things hadn't gone so well, and especially since this book sets up some things about them trying to make it look like everything's going okay as part of like what's going to be going on. So when I was getting towards the end, I was like, there's only a few pages left, and I feel like how much of this can really feel. It feels like there's a lot to get to still, and then it got to that final moment, and it was like end of cycle 1. I'm like, you beautiful bastard.
Once we got to the text pages there, and I was like, oh, what is all this?
Yeah, because it adds so much to what we've already got going on. Yeah.
And then I'm just like, the way that it adds to the pacing, because you turn that page and then you get to these texts and you're reading the conversation, right, between Nora and why am I blanking on the main guy?
Walter.
Walter. And I'm like, okay, that's where this ended. What is this? It almost felt like a post-credit scene that puts the whole rest of the movie in perspective. And then I got to the end of that second page at the bottom, and it went off, and I turned the page, and you see that this beautiful little, it's the house on the lake, and everything looks serene, and then basically end of part 1. And you're just like, oh my goodness, what are we doing? And the first part of this is like open chaos. Like I had no idea where any of it was going, like in the best way.
Oh yeah, it basically boils down to the second artist is with Walter. And Walter's basically saying, look, you've got 3 choices, right? This is what it boils down to. You can either, I can wipe everyone's memories and we can all go back to like not knowing what's going on and continue that way. I can't remember what the second choice was, but the third choice, which is the important one, is that I let you kill me, and you keep the balance, because it's actually kind of lucky that one of you died, because only might be 10 people in here, and now we're back to 10. So as long as maybe one of the artists like maybe read a few medical books so that they can pretend to be the medical person.
A doctor. Yeah. You can pretend, you can play it doctor, but he goes, yeah, my supervisors will get mad at me for letting you guys overpower me, but the experiment is still ongoing, so they'll mostly leave you guys alone.
Well, yeah, but he also says they won't even notice that I'm gone for a long time. Like, maybe it may be 100 years before they even come and check and find out that I'm not here. And at least at that point, the experiment will have been successful enough that they'll maybe let it go. Maybe they'll kill you then, but at least you've had 100 years of living before that happens. Right. But if you don't, if you create chaos, then they'll know very quickly that something's wrong, and they'll come and stomp you out, and that'll just be the end of it.
And all I can think of is how this book opened, right, with all the fire, and Nora looking like she was in a post-apocalyptic event, and that's not how this book ends at all. So, what the heck is in store for cycle 2 and 3, or let's just say 2, because we're
getting ahead of ourselves, but
but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it sort of reveals that there's other pods, there's other like groups of humans that have been preserved, and this is just Walter's group. And he kind of, and it's sort of like this thing where all throughout the series, it's been setting up that he cares about the people that he's picking. Yep. And in this issue, it kind of makes it clear that he wasn't supposed to pick people he cares for. He was supposed to pick the right people. And he's already kind of broken the rules by picking people that he had feelings for and that he wants to live. and that's already him breaking the rules. And it also reveals that he did speak to Nora, and it was set up numerous times throughout the book that him and Nora had this connection where they talked like in ways that he didn't talk with anyone else. And that before all this started, he's flat out saying, like, we don't get all the conversation, we assume that she knows a lot about what's about to happen, but we get the tail end of it, which is, okay, you're all going to go to sleep, and then when you wake up, it'll be like you just arrived at the house, and you won't remember how you got here, blah, 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 blah. All the stuff we've kind of known about. But she's like, hey, this isn't going to work. Like, they're going to, within a couple of months, they're going to rebel, and it's going to crescendo into chaos. And he's like, yeah, you're right, it is. The only way that people are going to actually become peaceful and actually continue is if they think they've defeated Walter and then kind of just accept that this is their status quo and live on from there. Like, if they don't think they've won and that they've made a choice to like live peacefully, then they'll always rebel against it. So even this, like, let's let them think they've beat me and that they've killed me. So he's not really dead. Like, they think they've killed him in this issue.
It's the illusion of choice. He allowed them to think that they had their fate in their own hands, which is what he needs them to do anyways. Because it was the fact that they were so close, he was so close with all of them, I feel is what led to all the problems, right? And so, because they think that they know Walter, and yeah. So, but the fact that Nora was in on this, though, and was kind of the mastermind behind it.
Well, that's the thing, though.
That's what got me.
I have to assume that because he is close with them, though, like, all of the other experiments, right, with other groups of humans, I have to assume they're all going to fail because they don't have this layer to it. They don't have this layer where they have this illusion of choice, where they understand that they're accepting that they're the last living humans, potentially, and that there's no Earth to go back to, if they're even on Earth anymore. That's a question that's raised. They could be on a spaceship for all we goddamn know.
Right.
So this idea at the end, which I thought really made the whole thing very compelling, is that this moment where Nora still remembers this conversation now and still knows that Walter's really alive and that this is all kind of a ruse to make them all live like they're supposed to. She knows that, and he has to trust that. He has to trust her and trust that she won't reveal this. And he says at the end, in the last couple of pages of his narration, that this is like the first time he's really felt this like sense of like one of them's got power over him, and that trust is like real love. Like, maybe Noah wouldn't phrase it that way, but he's feeling this real sense of love because he's having to be trusted, and like he's having to trust one of them and give them the power to maintain this. And this idea that that's what's actually going to like potentially succeed, even though we know on some level it doesn't, because we've seen glimpses of the future and it looks like hell. And if it does look like hell, what happens when his like supervisors or superiors show up and start asking questions?
And that the guy who had his, the doctor that his wife is the doctor that got killed, he still is like wanting vengeance on Walter, right? Even though like he's dead, I'm sure that like that's a thread that's going to keep going, because he holds Walter responsible for the death of his wife, so just because he's dead doesn't mean he's over it. So that's another thing that continues.
Oh, for sure. I just think it's this really fascinating thing that this issue, more than any of the other issues, really convinced me that Walter does care for these people. And even the fact that he picked them, he wasn't supposed to, like, it's not so much that he wasn't supposed to care about the people he picked, but he's picked these people specifically because he cares about them and not because they were the right choice for whatever this experiment was.
Well, and the fact that they all know each other too through Walter, he's the connection to all of them. It's not that just that he cares for them, but they all know each other as well. So there's dynamics there that are built in already too. So maybe that's also part of his key, that maybe they will be successful and something happens like a sabotage or something, and that's why it looks like hell. But Tynion has really written this thing where now anything can kind of happen, right? Like storytelling wise. But because we're so invested in all of this, that we're just kind of there for the ride. But yeah, I can't believe when I got to that tech stuff at the end, it was mind blowing, like actual mind blowing. The stuff about trust and
Yeah,
you know,
like the idea
having
that
power over him.
yeah, one
and
of
that's
them
something he has to be okay with.
one of them had the choice to betray him and chose not to and keep the secret, and that is probably like, even though he's felt friendly with them in the past, but it's all been kind of based in this lie because he's pretending to be a human, right? And any times that he had a real conversation with them about who he really was, he erased their memory. But this was an example of someone knowing exactly the situation they're in and choosing to uphold what he wanted or what he'd agreed with them was like they chose to agree with them, even knowing to some extent what he really is, and that makes him feel this connection that it's like, oh, in some way him befriending them might actually be what makes this experiment work versus the other ones that might all fail.
Right. It's he knows that Nora cares for him back, right? That it's mutual, and that's what it's based off of now.
Well, no, that's how he's interpreting it. I mean, arguably, she just like agrees logically that if we're going to keep this up and like not attract the attention of people who'll just wipe us from the map, that, she might just logically agree this is how it has to work. This is how we stay as a cam group. Not necessarily because she cares about Waller. Although I think going forward, the story is quite interesting if it does become clear that some of them do care about Waller, even once they know who he really is.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, really, really, really good storytelling, and I think this is one of Bueno's best looking books since we came back from the break. You know, all the stuff is really clean. A lot of that last panel of the house on the lake. Yeah, the art's really strong on this one.
Yeah. And it adds this extra layer to it that even this is still part of the manipulation. Like, not part of the experiment per se, but the idea that it's part of the manipulation to sort of get them to fall in line with the experiment is really quite interesting. That one of the best pages is probably when he's sitting waiting for their sort of like decision, and they all come in, and it's this 2-page layout where it's this big wide panel at the top where he's just kind of hunched over in the foreground, and the entire group of characters is sort of like watching over his shoulder. It's just, it really paints this idea that they're all hanging over his neck. This decision. So, really good stuff. And even the talking about killing him and how is anyone actually prepared to do that? Because it's one thing to accidentally shoot someone like it just happened a couple issues ago. It's another thing to like make the choice to murder someone.
Like, actually murder someone with malicious intent, because they feel like they have to.
So, no, very good stuff. And there's all these like other conversations that you get through, like the messages and the emails of people agreeing to come on the trip, which kind of like gives it this bookend quality to the first issue, because it's like, we're kind of like tying up the loose ends of like how everyone came on this trip. The only issue is that I may have to reread all this before the second series starts just to make sure I've got all of it in my head.
I mean, to be honest, I still can't keep all the characters straight. Like, because there's still a lot of characters and all the dynamics. I know the main ones, like the two artists, and Nora.
I think it'll benefit the reread before the second series. Absolutely,
for sure.
Well, and I might make the effort because it is so complex with all these characters. But I have to imagine it all lines up quite nicely. If you do keep them all in mind of who they all are.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is like it's almost kind of like Lost in that way, where you find out that about the tail section. And it's like, if in the second one, are we going to see what the other experiments are up to? Like,
Oh, that's a possibility. We could,
because now this just opened up that whole world now too. There's more than just what we thought. So it adds layers to the book. But yeah, I remember when this book got announced, I was like, oh, a horror book set on a lake. Is this going to be like, monsters and it's this completely different sci-fi psychological type horror. And so it completely upended my expectations.
Yeah. So. There's also a panel right before the ending as well, where you see kind of like the entire map of the like the lake, but it's like in like a hexagon, almost as if that's like what the dome is.
just where they are, whatever aspect they're in.
Yeah, so if this is on a ship or if it's in some some other planet or something, but this is the shape of the experiment, is this hexagon. So yeah, really great visuals there. We've focused mainly on the last like 3 or 4 pages because the ending really is what makes all this special. Because like all of them like deciding what to do with Walter for the rest of the issue, it is quite exciting because it is them making a choice of like, how do we progress with the knowledge of the situation that we are in, and that there's these alien overlords that might come and kill us at any time, and the best path forward, regardless of how we're going to do it, is to just pretend that everything's okay and be peaceful and so on and so on. But then this little pivot at the end of no, like this was all an illusion of choice because Walter like wants it to succeed, and this is the only way that they'll actually find peace, is thinking that they've won in some way. So fascinating.
Yep.
Yeah, end of cycle 1. So yeah, but he's also speaking in hindsight as well, because he says it would take them longer for them to realize that they would need to fight to keep this this peaceful world that they've now got to themselves. So yeah, even then, this is so even the dialogue itself is hinting at all the big things to come, and all the conflict that's to come. So
so
that's very good. All right, what are you giving Nice House in the Lake? Issue 12.
I'm gonna give this a 9.
I'm going to go 9.5. I think this was an exceptional issue, and really put a nice undercurrent under everything else that we'd already had up until this point, and contextualized a lot of it. So, really good.